Happy Tuesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Still not too much going on, but we have hit rock bottom already, and rock bottom being the coldest that we will be throughout your 7-day forecast. That was early this morning, where we had many temperatures scattered about the upper teens and the low 20s, but very thankfully we didn't have as much of a breeze present. In fact, really nothing in the way of wind, so your feels like temperatures weren't well down into the teens, like 11 and 12 degrees, which were some of the wind chill values in Macon and down in Americus yesterday morning. So we are kicking off a warm up as we head into this afternoon. Rain chances are returning on Thursday, starting to get a better picture of what's going to happen rain-wise. And it does look like almost everyone is going to get some sort of rain, so that's going to be the good news. But we will dry out as we go into the beginning of your weekend, drying out as early as maybe mid-morning as we go into Friday. So we'll go over the latest about what we're expecting as we head into this big weekend, because obviously many of you, it might be kick-starting an extended time off of school, an extended time off of work as we do transition into the Christmas holiday week next week. So we'll walk around the quad, very similar to yesterday. Nothing but blue sky over downtown Macon, Warner Robins, the Georgia National Fairgrounds, and in downtown Dublin. But the big thing that I've been telling folks all morning long during the morning show is we haven't had too much in the way of winds. You can see the flags down here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. They are blowing a little bit, maybe from west to east, maybe coming out of the northwesterly direction, but all in all, I think this is more of just an occasional gust. And right now, I do believe your temperatures are continuing to warm up above the threshold to where the winds are going to be impacting them. But maybe a slight breeze. If you can get an uptick in the winds up to maybe 5 miles per hour, it could still make some of these numbers feel a tad bit colder. But we do see temperatures scattered about the low 40s and the mid 40s. So starting to see a bit of a lighter shade of that blue as opposed to that deep royal blue that has been present pretty much over the last 24 hours, pretty far and wide across central Georgia. 43 up in our northernmost counties, 43 in Forsyth, Monticello, Eatonton, down to a 42 in Macon, 41 in Warner Robins, 46 in Dublin, 45 up in Milledgeville, 45 in Cochran, a 45 in Vidalia. So it looks like 46 in Dublin. That's going to be our warmest temperature that we have here in central Georgia, and it does look like it is accompanying many of our neighboring states. 46 also over in Charleston, 46 in Jackson, Mississippi. A little bit cooler down into central Alabama, 41 degrees in Montgomery. And then we start to transition into some 50s as you go closer to the Gulf Coast or the Atlantic Coast. 56 in Jacksonville, 64 in Orlando, and it looks like Texas is kind of snapping out of the very cold spell that they've had, with some temperatures in the low 50s and even the mid 50s down in Laredo. So much colder farther to the north, like we are going to see quite often over the next couple of months. Very thankfully, we're not still hovering in the upper 20s like Indianapolis is. We're not still stuck in the 30s like Lexington, Nashville, up to Kansas City and Wichita. And actually, kind of unseasonably warm up here in Denver. This is 52 degrees right here. That's matching the temperature down in San Angelo, only 1 degree colder than Houston, up in Denver, Colorado, believe it or not. So just showing you the influence that those higher elevations will have as you go to the west of Denver, start to get into the Rocky Mountains. That's where you still find your blue shades, maybe even some shades of some light purple or pink, and that's going to get some blistering cold temperatures. But nonetheless, this is elsewhere across the United States. Let's go back to our point of view and talk about our forecast that we do have throughout the rest of today and going into the weekend. Winds and wind gusts at the most, maybe seeing a 6 mile per hour breeze up in Milledgeville. So I imagine Milledgeville might have a slightly cooler feels like temperature, somewhere closer to the 40 degree mark. But in fact, none of your feels like temperatures are still in the 30s, and that's a very good thing, and already starting to see signs of some more pleasant feeling weather compared to what we did have yesterday, because we'll talk about the numbers. And 46, that was our high temperature yesterday. So it was a pretty chilly afternoon, especially when you factored in the occasional breeze that was still lingering through some portions of the early afternoon hours. 46 falls 15 degrees below your average high of 61 degrees this time of year, and your low temperature of 21 degrees yesterday morning didn't quite get too close to the record. 18 degrees was the record back in 1968, but still a little bit too close for comfort in my personal opinion, and 17 degrees below your average low of 38 degrees. 75 was the record back in 1929, so it doesn't look like we really flirted with the records except for maybe that record low just a tad bit, but 3 degrees above that very thankfully. And your year departure of rain, now close to around an inch below where we should be at this point of the year. But I did allude to some widespread rain chances that we do have in store as we go throughout the end of your short-term forecast. Sunrise 7:29, sunset at 5:30. Don't think we had any change from the previous day before. And a quick reminder of the important dates to be on the lookout for in terms of those sunrises and sunsets. December 21st, so that's going to be Sunday. That is going to mark our shortest day of the calendar year, as we do have the winter solstice. So we are going to have just under 10 hours of daylight at 9 hours and 59 minutes. Then as we transition into the new year, first day of 2026, that is going to mark the beginning of a stretch of about a week, maybe even a week and a half, where we do have our latest sunrise. So at 7:37 a.m. So the sunrise obviously not getting too much later, not going to get up to 7:45, not going to get to 8 a.m. But then sunset is going to continue to progressively get later and later. And then as we go into January 25th, I said I was going to fix this yesterday, so it just slipped my mind. Either the 25th or the 21st, I do believe it's the 25th, we will have our first 6 p.m. sunset once again, and then starting to get into the neighborhood of around 10 and a half hours of daylight. So the days are continuing to get longer and longer after we get past December 21st. And then I'll have to change the headline with this graphic that the days continue to get longer. But for the time being, they are continuing to get shorter and shorter as we go into the kind of late portion of December right now. We're still about a week away, a little less than a week away until we start to hit that turning point for when the days will steadily get longer and longer. But you're not going to notice it for quite some time. It's going to be closer that we get to February that you're going to notice some different sunrise and sunset times and the days starting to get a little bit longer. So it was a frigid start this morning. Like I said, I think even our actual temperatures went a little bit below what the actual numbers stood at as of yesterday. The main difference was we didn't have any winds present, so your feels like temperatures sat exactly where your actual temperatures were standing. So maybe some numbers got down to, I believe, 19 here in the Macon area. We could have even seen an 18 pop up. And that might flirt with the record as well, but I don't think we got too close to it. I believe the record low for today stood at 17 degrees, and I don't think the numbers got that low unless my eyes just deceive me for a little bit. We check that temperature map pretty frequently throughout the morning show hits. And then going into this afternoon, and we're already noticing a warming trend, slightly warmer. Remember, 46 was your high temperature yesterday. Our numbers are already sitting within that range. Dublin was already at 46 degrees when we took a look at those current conditions. Well, we still have a ways to go, and I think a high temperature of 57 degrees is going to be in order this afternoon. But the important note is still below average. It is feeling a lot better than yesterday. However, we are still searching for the return of maybe a good stretch of some warmer weather. It's been unseasonably cool to start out the month of December. And speaking of which, we added one more blue box to the calendar graphic that we do have here. 46 for a high temperature, excuse me. It just looks so much like a low temperature. That matching our lowest high temperature of the month thus far. You can see that now we have 11 below average days with your afternoon highs. 2 days that we are still standing at average exactly on Wednesday, or last Wednesday, excuse me. That was when our average high temperature was 62 degrees. It has since decreased down to 61 degrees, which we hit exactly on Sunday. And then 2 above average days, last Friday and going into last Saturday. Last Saturday is most certainly an outlier. It is the only number even above the 70-degree threshold over the course of around the past 2 weeks. But could we see the return of some 70s in any day of your 7-day forecast? I'm not too confident in maybe reaching the 70-degree mark, but I am confident that we will have more of these red boxes to put on the back half of the work week once we continue to pop those boxes up on the calendar graphic. So hour by hour, we'll continue to warm up all the way into that 2, 3, and 4 o'clock window, hitting our high temperatures somewhere in the mid 50s, or maybe even stretching into the upper 50s. I do have more confidence that we will go just a little bit above what this graphic says. 54 by the time we go into 5 p.m. and then dropping down into the 40s as we head into the evening. So make sure if you have any evening plans tonight, you are still wearing those layers because it is going to get chilly fairly quickly once again. but maybe not as much so as what we have been talking about the last 2 nights, how quickly those temperatures have dropped, because we will have some saving grace, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in future view once we pop it up. But satellite and radar, crystal clear, not a single cloud in the sky. We do see some cloud cover down to the south of us and over to the west of us. So remember that, because that is looking to push over towards the east over the next 24 hours, and we are looking to settle into maybe a bit of a gloomier pattern for tomorrow, but I still think you'll get plenty of peaks of sunshine as you go throughout Wednesday. But for today, nothing really worth writing home about. Just pleasant sunny skies. A beautiful sunset should be in order as we go closer to this 5 p.m. hour, and then the temperatures are going to drop pretty quickly as we go into the overnight hours. But overnight, we are looking at cloud cover to increase, so this is going to help keep the numbers just a tad bit warmer than, say, they would if we did have some crystal clear skies. That's also a big reason why your numbers have been so chilly the past 2 mornings walking outside. If we had some cloud cover, those numbers would have been slightly warmer, but it does look like the very frigid cold air mass that we've had in place behind the passing of Sunday's front is finally going to get out of the picture for a little bit, and we'll have a slightly warmer start to tomorrow morning, although it's not going to necessarily feel too much warmer. But expect some clouds in the sky, and once again, I mentioned it yesterday, keeping our fingers crossed that we can have maybe some relatively thin cloud cover and some gaps in the cloud cover that will allow for a spectacular sunrise tomorrow morning, like what we were talking about as of last Thursday. Throughout the day on Wednesday, that's what you should really expect. Some passing clouds here and there, some moments of getting some shade, some moments of direct sunlight. As we go into Wednesday, it still looks like this cloud cover is not producing anything in the way of rainfall. So that's going to be very beneficial for outdoor plans' sake. However, overnight into early morning on Thursday is where that pattern starts to change. Number one, the change that we do see is the cloud cover is a whole lot more widespread and is a lot more dense in nature. And then as you go into morning commute time right there around 8 a.m., maybe even a little bit earlier, we still have this possibility of just a few spotty sprinkles to greet you out the door. Nothing that's going to be long lasting and not even too much water that's really going to be on your windshield, except for having to turn the wiper blades on for a couple of seconds as you make your way out and about. Then we transition into the first couple of hours of the workday, of the school day, and then as we go closer and closer to lunchtime, that's when I do expect more widespread rain to start to surge up into central Georgia. This is mainly because we are going to start to get more moisture from the southwest over the course of Wednesday into Thursday, and it's going to kind of just be a big blob of moisture, not very organized whatsoever. It's not in the form of a low pressure system whatsoever, but all of this is going to create fairly widespread rain chances in the southeast as we go throughout Thursday. So 11 a.m. still looks like a mostly cloudy atmosphere, but our southernmost counties are starting to get some pockets of some steadier and heavier rain. And then all of that eventually makes its way up here into central Georgia throughout the afternoon on Thursday. So this is 2 p.m., maybe getting into the time frame that you're getting out of school. I know even Houston County schools, they only have a half day on Thursday. So you should expect a messy environment. You may just beat the rain as you are heading out of school, say around 12:30, maybe even closer to 12 o'clock. But I would plan on having the rain jacket ready to go, even though you are going to hopefully be home by this time in the afternoon if you do have that half day, but most of you still going to be at work, and this is obviously going to complicate things. A very dreary atmosphere, widespread rain, everyone in central Georgia going to get something in the way of a shower, whether it's just a light sprinkle shower, whether that's going to be more of a steadier shower, or that's even a pocket of heavy rain that you can see in some of those yellows and oranges. Remember, when you start to get into the yellow, orange, and red colors, that's going to indicate your heavier rainfall and really kind of the dividing line. If we start to see some red or maybe even that dark red, that maroon shade, that is going to indicate the potential for maybe even some thunderstorms. But we don't see anything in the way of that. I do just think it's just going to be widely scattered showers, some a bit heavier than others. But this is 2 p.m., so what's it look like as you are making your way out of work, maybe heading home as you get ready to wrap up the work week? Well, still plenty of widespread rain, but the intensity or the rainfall rates associated with these are going to continue to go down and get a lot lighter in nature, but still fairly widespread light and steady rain all across central Georgia by 5 p.m. And then we finally start to see these rain chances push out of the picture. So the farther east that you live, you are going to hold on to these rain chances a little bit longer than, say, areas over to the west like Upson County, Crawford County, Taylor counties. And this is around 8 p.m., just past dinner time. But by the time we continue to roll through the nighttime hours, 10, 11 p.m., all of the rain is out of the forecast for a brief moment. And like I mentioned, this is just going to be kind of an unorganized cluster of moisture coming up from the southwest and the Gulf. But what is going to push this out of the picture is going to be an approaching frontal boundary, where you do see kind of these spotty and broken showers, maybe even some pockets of some storms right there around 11 p.m., getting ready to make their push into western Georgia from eastern Alabama. Well, as we progress into the nighttime hours, it does look like as it comes through during that cooler portion of the day, it really loses its steam. So we could have a few spotty showers throughout the overnight hours and early morning hours on Friday. But overall, I don't think this is going to have too many implications to your early morning routine. And the good news is, the earlier this rain comes in, and if it does come in mainly in the overnight hours into the early morning hours, obviously many of you are going to be fast asleep. And number two, that means it's going to get out of here. The front is going to pass throughout the day on Friday, but you can see this frontal boundary pretty accurately depicted, because take a look at these gusty winds that start to settle in as we go into the overnight and early morning hours on Friday, and that's going to be behind the actual passage of the boundary on the very back edge of that cloud cover moving through. So let's talk about how much rain we're expecting. I mentioned that your rain is going to be very widespread, even some pockets of some steadier and some heavier showers. Well, it does look like most of central Georgia still falling below the 1 inch mark in terms of rainfall, with the exception of Cordele, who is popping up a total of 1 inch. Don't get locked into exactly 1 inch of rain down there in Crisp County like we always say with this graphic. Think of it as just a general range. So you should get at least a couple tenths of an inch of rain. Some localized areas that get heavy shower after heavy shower are going to pop up some totals, maybe closer to half an inch, maybe closer to 3/4 of an inch, or maybe even the potential for some localized areas to receive 1 inch of rainfall. But this is going into Thursday around 7 p.m. I do believe that our easternmost counties still have a little bit more rain to get out of this system. And I was saying all morning long that we do have a couple more showers that could add to those totals as we go into the overnight hours and early on Friday morning. I'm not thinking that rain overnight Thursday into early Friday is going to be anything of real significance. I don't think it's going to put, but maybe about another tenth of an inch or two onto some of those totals. So it does look like for the most part, we're looking at under an inch of rain that is going to fall throughout Thursday. It is going to be a dreary day. And obviously with the implications and the forecast it's going to have, especially for that evening commute home, you may be wishing that at least, okay, the dreary conditions are giving us some much needed rain. It is going to be much needed, but I don't necessarily have too much confidence in this improving some of the drought conditions that we've continued to have for about the last 3 months' time. But speaking of the winds, this gives us a really good indication of where the frontal boundary is that is going to sweep through. So throughout today, nothing in the way of gusty winds whatsoever. That story is the same throughout Wednesday. And then we go into Thursday, where we start to see a bit of an uptick in the breeze during the first part of the day. This is 9 a.m. on Thursday morning. Throughout the day on Thursday, you'll have some pockets where you could have some gusts up to 15, 20 miles per hour. But then up here to the north and the northwest, this pocket of red, maybe even some pink, that's going to be the frontal boundary itself. And you see that starts to sweep through overnight Thursday into really early in the morning on Friday. It's very likely that you will be fast asleep as these winds are blowing very early in the morning on Friday, but you may be awoken by some of the trees outside that continue to sway. And I do imagine that the breeze is going to stick around throughout a majority of your Friday. So I would plan on Friday being a bit of a breezy day in the forecast, even though we are going to get the clearing in the skies. But honestly, that's a best case scenario. We don't want a whole lot of rain with those gusty winds. That would just make for a nasty atmosphere, a lot of that sideways rain. So over the next 3 days, it is kind of feeling like two different seasons here in central Georgia. How about this? 19 degrees. That was my low temperature this morning, and 57 degrees for a high temperature. This is a temperature fluctuation of nearly 40 degrees throughout today, and that's if we get up to 57. Who says we don't overshoot it? We get up to 58, 59 degrees. that would be exactly 40 degrees on the dot of an increase if we are to record, or if we have recorded a low of 19 degrees up here in the Macon area this morning. But a little bit warmer tomorrow. It's obviously not going to necessarily feel like it. 31 degrees, yes, it looks a lot better than 19. However, it is still going to be 1 degree below freezing temperature. So continue to bundle up as you walk outside tomorrow morning. And then I think tomorrow afternoon, still going to feel a bit better, even in light of the increase in cloud cover that we will see. And then with that cloud cover staying put into the morning hours on Thursday, that's going to result in our best feeling morning that we've had in quite some time. 42 degrees for a morning low temperature, which is still on the chillier side, but it's just not downright bitterly and blistering cold like 19 degrees was as of this morning. And I do expect some gaps in the cloud cover to get up to that 64 degree mark as of right now. As of getting a better picture of Thursday as a whole, it does look like that cloud cover is fairly widespread, so we're going to have to continue to have some source of moisture and some surge in moisture in order to increase the dew point temperatures, and that along with that increase in the moisture content, it would increase your high temperatures. But a very good rain chance at 90%. Honestly, I'm leaning more towards going towards the 100% chance because it looks like everyone, and I do have pretty good confidence that everyone is going to see something in the way of rain. But right now, electing to go with the 90%. If we continue to see good model agreement over the next 24 hours, I feel more and more confident about everyone receiving something in the way of rainfall than I will throw a 100% chance of rain on Thursday. And once again, the timing of that mainly going to be the late morning hours just before lunchtime, continuing all throughout the afternoon, all throughout the late afternoon, and into the evening and in the nighttime hours. But I do expect us to finally begin to clear the rain out of the picture as we go into around 10 to 11 p.m. on Thursday before those few spotty showers ahead of the frontal boundary move through during early on Friday morning. So let's take a look at the long-range models. How are they resolving that frontal boundary? Well, as you can see, that big fetch of moisture from the south and the southwest continuing to push those showers up to the northeast of us, up into South Carolina, North Carolina, and areas as far as the mid-Atlantic, Virginia, Washington, getting into Maryland. But the frontal boundary is just behind it. So this actually has pretty good resolution because we see the gap in cloud cover and the gap in rain in between these two systems. So the frontal boundary back over to the west and northwest of us, still holding together, fairly organized as it is kind of crossing those areas during the late afternoon time frame. But of course, 10 p.m. right here, it's still holding its steam fairly significantly, I guess you could say. But as it continues to progress down to the south and the southeast, it's going into the overnight hours. So cooler temperatures, not as much to work with as it would have with, say, some of the warmer numbers in the afternoon. So 3 a.m. still looks like our fair share of a few spotty showers on Friday, early Friday morning. We could see some of those try to hang around to the morning commute time. I'm not too confident in that. Future View just showed you that a lot of those showers would be moving in close to the 4 a.m. hour, so I don't quite think they would stick around until 9 a.m. So I do think that maybe some of these long-range models are holding on to the rain chances a little bit longer than our higher resolution model is. But the one idea that has remained the same amongst both of these models and is going to be the same on Future View as it goes this far out in time is that Friday afternoon going to wrap up on a crystal clear and a dry note. So a great start to the beginning of your weekend. It will be slightly cooler on Friday afternoon compared to maybe what's going to happen on Thursday afternoon. All in all, it's not going to be paired up with rain, and I still think the high temperatures are not going to be too much to complain about. It's going to more so be a story of those morning low temperatures as we go throughout the weekend, that you are going to feel some of that slightly cooler air. Still staying dry throughout Saturday, so weekend plans still looking good. Sunday, mainly later in the day, is when we do have another very minuscule chance of rain. We talked about it yesterday. It was not looking impressive, and it still does not look too impressive. So as of right now, I'm saying all weekend long looks good for any sort of outdoor plans that you do have. And then we progress into the beginning of the shortened work week next week, or maybe even into the beginning of your Christmas holiday. Still looks like a fairly clear environment down here in the southeast. Plenty of spotty rain chances around us, but not too much model agreement whatsoever. Once again, this goes all the way out to Tuesday at 4 p.m. That is December 23rd. So of course, we are keeping a close eye on what this model will look like as we go into next Wednesday and Thursday for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day plans ahead, but we still don't quite have a good idea of that as of right now. It's still a little bit too far out to say for certain, but I can give you a general idea of what the temperatures are going to do, because right now I think this warmer stretch of weather is not only going to last for the next 5 days for your 7-day forecast, I think it even extends as we go into the Christmas holiday itself. We may have a frontal boundary or two that try to come through, and it might result in a slight cool down like what you see between Thursday and Friday when that first frontal boundary comes through, mainly during the very early morning hours on Friday. So we could see slight fluctuation, maybe a bit of a bump down in your temperatures, closer to average for this time of year in the lower 60s, but then you will kickstart another warming trend as you go in the days past the passage of a frontal boundary. Morning low temperatures, like I mentioned, still pretty cold out tomorrow morning, but then you get a little bit more pleasant, somewhere above average and in the lower half of the 40s to start out Thursday and Friday. And then we do see more of a temperature fluctuation between your morning lows day by day after the passage of these frontal boundaries. So 44 goes down to 30 degrees as you walk out the door on Saturday morning. So if we go about this knowledge and the general thinking and what the models have been saying as we go into the extended forecast, I do imagine we'll have our fair share of near or even above average temperatures as we roll into Christmas week next week. As of right now, the general idea is mid to maybe even upper 60s for high temperatures on Christmas Day. I know it's probably a little bit warm for most of your likings. However, you will have some of the chillier temperatures present in the morning hours, so try to make the most out of that. In terms of rain chances, I'm not seeing anything definitive that looks like a washout whatsoever, but maybe wouldn't even rule out a stray shower or two as of right now. But like I said, we'll fine-tune those rain chances once the long-range models pop them up. Until then, just go ahead and soak up this warmer stretch of weather. Like I said, we're going to have a lot of red and gray boxes that we add to that calendar graphic over the foreseeable future. The one blemish that we have is going to be Thursday, so you should expect on a pretty dreary atmosphere throughout Thursday. Some warmer temperatures, however, somewhere right there around or even above average, and your morning low temperatures finally going to be a whole lot more of a pleasant environment to walk outside to, as opposed to the 19-degree mark that we had as of this morning. So that front comes through, slight cool down into Friday afternoon, not really noticing it whatsoever. The rain chances on Friday really for just the early morning hours. It's going to be mainly when most of you are fast asleep. The only chance you really have of catching an early morning shower on Friday is if you're heading out to the gym, say around 4 or 5 a.m., maybe even lingering into 6 a.m. at the very latest, but I'm not too confident that those showers will even hold together by the time we get closer to sunrise. So going to be a chilly morning on Saturday morning, but the afternoon, once again, going to be nice and pleasant. We see another warm up as we go into Sunday. First day of winter, and 68 degrees is not feeling like winter whatsoever as you go into the afternoon, but I still think it's going to be mighty pleasant. And those rain chances only at about 10%. That's really just to cover the bases right now until the models start to get their act together and we start to see some better agreement. But I don't have too much confidence on rain chances really throughout the entirety of your weekend after we get through the early morning hours on Friday. So Friday afternoon, Friday evening plans, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening plans, and continuing that into Sunday, it looks good to go weather-wise. None of these rain chances are worth canceling any of your outdoor plans over, and we'll continue to fine-tune the forecast as we go into Monday. Maybe another bit of the temperature fluctuation. We're just going to bounce around the 60s is what it looks like over the course of the next week, maybe even week and a half. And long-range extended models still not really picking up on anything in the way of a big frontal boundary moving through, but we'll continue to keep you updated. But obviously, I've been mentioning Christmas a lot, and we're going to keep a close eye on it. But yes, the countdown has begun. We are in single digits away from the Christmas holiday. Your average high temperature on Christmas Day, right there around 60 degrees. So I would expect some slightly warmer numbers than that as of right now. And your average low for Christmas morning, 37 degrees. I think we'll be in the neighborhood of that range. We could start out in the upper 30s, the low 40s. But again, still trying to fine-tune that forecast. We don't like to go past 7 days because obviously it's kind of anyone's best guess at that point. But we have a general idea as of right now and cannot wait. And 9 days until Christmas Day, that is. So 8 days until Christmas Eve, until St. Nick gets going. So only a little more than a week to make sure that you find yourself on the nice list. That'll do it for your extended forecast today. We'll be back once again at 11 a.m. tomorrow with a look at what's ahead.